don't really think we head off.
So Jericho will head off to try to judge the necessary distances and try to figure out how to put himself himself and anything they get away with safely out of sight, whether it's inside one of those houses to the north or on a roof or in an alley between them, something like that.
Yeah,
whatever
totally.
seems most plausible.
Absolutely. So you can make it out fairly easily the same way you came in because you've identified already that there's nothing really blocking you from doing that.
Yep.
So you head back out down the stairs, up the stairs again, across the platform, and then you go back into like this storage area where they were keeping all the crap from the old temple. And then you exit out and you head back around to the backside. Farron, what's the thoughts here?
So there wasn't really anything here. I mean,
Yeah, so the hallway was fairly kind of bland. The storage area had basically everything that was in the temple before, like the pulpits, the pews, the tapestries, the statues. All of it was just kind of haphazardly just kind of trashed in this storage area.
Okay. So I would kind of see what's more along this side.
So you're going to go explore the other side? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's totally a thing you can do. Absolutely. So, so you head, you ready break, and Farron, you walk around, and this whole time while you're there, Farron, because I'm assuming Jericho leaves fairly quickly, and then Farron, maybe you're in there a little bit longer. You see the individual who's inside of the barrier gets to like the page that they were flipping towards, and begins to like lays a hand kind of hovering over the book a little bit and grabs the staff again and kind of holds it in front of them, and then they begin chanting with this kind of I would almost say that you are probably a bit surprised at how piercing the voice is. It is deep and rich and melodious, and you can tell right away that it's a singing voice, right? Like, just when people talk, you can tell sometimes if they're going to have a good singing voice. And it kind of probably stops you a little bit because you're a purveyor of those arts. And the individual is speaking another languages. What languages, or another language? What languages do you know?
Common, Elvish.
Okay, yeah. So you do not know this one, and it sounds in this nice, and sounds human or maybe elf, to be honest. It sounds like very kind of raspy and harsh, but very out of place with the voice that's speaking it. And the language itself seems more guttural and kind of primal, whatever language this individual is speaking. So you don't understand what they're saying, but certainly can't be good, I'm sure.
No. Alright. Yeah, I have to see what I can use as a distraction.
Okay, cool. So you arrive at the other side and you head off, and as I've described, these are kind of like these here. It's two stories, right? So the top story is a covered, like, walled in hallway, and then there's like it runs across open air hallway that runs underneath of it, and you take the hallway, I assume, and you walk in, and it's kind of similar to how the other hallway is. It's I think the notable exception is this hallway over here was not very well lit. It had a couple of like lanterns and sconces being lit, but this one is much more well lit, almost as if it's more heavily trafficked. And as you're walking down it, I think that you hear from down at the end of the hallway, you hear like a door being opened, and so I assume you're invisible, so they can't see you. But you kind of like back up and like lay yourself flat against the wall, I assume. And you hear the clanking of metal kind of coming down the hallway, and you see a light kind of flickering because it is quite a long hallway, a few hundred feet for sure. And you see, as the light begins to grow closer, you see there are a couple of guardsmen who are kind of marching along. One of them is a human female, and she has she's holding like a torch up. And she's got like her shield in her other hand, and she's kind of like marching with a spear on her back. And then marching behind her as they pass, you can see what are very clearly undead, who appear to be dressed in guards' uniforms. And there's probably like 10 in total that pass you as you're kind of walking down. And so they go down the staircase behind you and go out, and maybe if you like peer out one of the windows, you can see that they appear to be doing a changing of the guard, where they're exchanging one for the other, kind of ceremoniously.
The undead are changing guards?
Yeah. If you remember from last time, that was kind of one of the odd things about what was going on here. They seem to be making a point of making it seem as normal as possible. To the point of like dressing and scenting the undead so that at a glance they didn't appear to be undead.
Fun and confusing.
Indeed. So you continue down to the end of the hallway, I assume, and you get to the door, and you're able to open it up, and that same creak that you heard from way back at the other end of the hallway kind of goes off. And when it does, roll me a perception check. Perfect. So when it does, you open the door and you walk through and you step in and you close it quietly behind you. And it's a similar room to what was over on this side, where it's like a spiral staircase that leads up to where the platform that you're standing on that has like a low railing. And you can see that down along this room's been entirely cleared out. And there is a great pile of bones in the middle. You can immediately identify that there are that they're not like humanoid bones. They look like animal bones, and some of them are massive in size, probably as big as you.
Okay.
And there's like a great pile of them in the bottom of this, and you look around some more, and you can see that there are there's probably a cart that is there's a door that's open, and there's a cart that is loading some other like bones, and you can see like a couple of like clothed bodies that are being like tossed in as well. And I think that's the point at which your 10 kicks in. And you're leaning over the railing looking at all this, and you turn around, and there are two of those guardsmen who are just kind of standing there. They're the undead guardsmen skeletons, but they're within 2 feet of you. But they were standing so stock still and silent, because they're not breathing or anything, that you just walked right by them when you came through the door. And it's also like pitch black in here as well, even though that doesn't affect you as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just kind of standing there, and so like maybe you catch your breath for a moment. But they don't appear to be like attacking you or anything.
Okay. Do the bones look of somewhat importance?
What do you mean by somewhat important? Like, how would you identify that by looking at them? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of information do you want if you make a roll in ice and you pass?
Are they merely like haphazardly thrown there,
Okay.
like the pews were in the other one?
Gotcha. So do they appear to be in some kind of order? Yeah. I mean, roll me an investigation check. They definitely appear to be not thrown in here. Like, they haven't been tossed aside. But as far as, like, any specific kind of order, maybe not. But, like, none of them are... They're not, like, piled up in the corner like the pews and stuff were.
You're taken better care of than...
Yeah, for sure. And you can see around the big pile of bones in the middle, there are, like, some... There are moving shapes, and you can see that they're, like, undead and some living enemies that are... You know, they're they drag the bodies around the pile of bones and then pile up the bodies in one corner of the room. They all appear to be, like, avoiding this particular area. They're not, like, piling more bodies on top of the bones or moving anything around or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah. How would I go about setting this entire room ablaze?
I think that's the hard part, is there's not really a whole lot of, like, burnable here, but what there is there do appear to be, like, corpses that are piled up, assumingly to be raised at some point, and they're kind of wrapped in cloth, so those would definitely burn for sure.
Sure.
Whether or not it would spread to the building, because this is a stone building. The Oryx Temple is basically made out of stone, but, like, the windows and stuff are wood. The roof is probably wood as well. So, like, if you got a big enough blaze going, you might be able to, like, get enough heat on the roof and some sparks, and maybe you could light the roof on fire. Yeah, that's maybe something you could do.
Okay, so reasonable to set something alight.
Yeah,
I mean,
good enough.
I'm not sure we actually want to burn down a church.
Well, I mean, Farron's never been that religious himself, so he doesn't have a problem with
a
it.
chill runs up Aylin's spine.
Along with Morella's again.
Really, you just always have chills running up your spine, though. It's hard to discern whether or not it's actually a good thing or a bad thing.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think I've found my destruction location.
Okay, perfect. So we flash over to Jericho, who's prowling around the outside of the temple now, and you head back to those houses, and these are noble manors, and you would know that, obviously. You lived in this city forever. These are noble manors because they're in between Ulrich's Temple, which is the most holy place in the city, and the palace, which is the most important place in the city. And a lot of these are where, like, the high priest would be. A lot of them would be, like, very, very important religious figures. I think that this right here, this building in particular right here, is the guest house for any, like, super important dignitaries of the religious style. Like, if Aylin were to come on a visit, she would probably be housed in this building here, kind of level of nobility. It's a lot more focused in this particular, in Ulrichsmund specifically, around religion, mostly for Ulrich, but also some of the others are represented here. And then these kind of medium-sized buildings are other, probably, churches and stuff. And again, this is all information you just have because, you've been here forever. This is your home city. These immediate houses are probably secondary buildings to the church, so there's probably one that is a, like, barracks of sorts for the paladins, like one of these bigger buildings, for the various paladins, if, they were here and alive. What they would attend to. The altar boys and girls are probably housed in some of these as well. So they're support buildings for the temple itself and everything that might go with those. But at the end of the day, they're residents.
Right. I mean, given the state that the temple itself is in, the fact that these are also temple-associated buildings is kind of concerning. So, assuming he's got the time, and I think he does, he's going to want to actually head over there and try to scope out what's going on inside.
Yeah, and so I think that I think that you swing around the side of the temple and you head over there to those housing units, and the ones that are here on the first row appear to be mostly intact. There's probably like some new framing for a door or whatever that was broken at some point, or maybe there's a door that's broken that is kind of just shattered off its hinges. But for the most part, they seem to be in good repair. This building right here, I think you can see the skeleton of it through the alleyways of this one. It appears to be completely incinerated, with the exception of a couple of like the larger beams, and a couple of just like last standing pillars that used to be inside of here. And I think you get a very uneasy feeling as the closer you approach to this larger building here. As I said, it's basically like the residence and barracks for the paladins that would exist here. So
yes,
you could assume, it's either been defaced or this was a hotbed of activity during a hostile takeover.
Yeah, I don't suppose I've heard anything about that in the time that I've been in the city.
Roll me a history check, just to see if you've come across it, I think,
Sure.
and retained it. It's not going to be particularly hard, because it probably would be a story that's out there, but I guess to see how accurate your information is that you have. Let's put it that way. An 11's okay. It's not great, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that both of those things are probably true to the best of your knowledge. You know that the attack happened at night, under the cover of darkness, and so you know that most of the paladins are probably asleep at the time, or at least the high-ranking ones that live here. And they probably were caught a bit unawares, and you also probably heard that this place was kind of the temple itself, and then also by happenstance the support buildings for the temple were one of the first hit initially, from the different various units that could hit it initially. Obviously they had to break through the gate, but units that could fly, or mages, necromancers, the dead begin to rise, because obviously the dead are also all treated at Ulrich's temple. So there were probably like signs of a couple of bodies that kind of, or like a group of bodies that hadn't been tossed yet that were rezzed and began kind of the assault here. So yeah, I think all of the things are true, but as far as specifics, I'm not sure you get any specifics.
Okay. So, see, what I'm not sure about is whether that implies that there are definitely going to be more undead still crawling over that place, or if that means that it's going to be a place that no one goes.
So you want to kind of gauge the activity in this area?
Yeah, because
sure.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out where he could ideally land a dimension door so that hopefully they would not be noticed arriving there, and could then make an effective getaway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I'll ask for another check on that, and I think it's just going to be an investigation check. I think it's just literally investigating the area to see the type of activity that happens.
Fair enough. Let's use that inspiration.
Inspiration sounds great.
Inspired investigation.
That is a good inspiration roll.
Spectacular.
Wow. Wow, that is possibly the best use of inspiration I've seen in a very long time. So how that plays out is you begin kind of going and kind of ducking in and out of the buildings, and again, you're invisible, so you have no fear of trundling along by and somebody seeing you. But you do, I think, in your time, it's probably one of those things where you're kind of weaving in and out of the people walking by, and you're like, okay, where can I land this? Where can I land this? And I think that you realize very quickly that these buildings here are in use pretty actively. But you also realize that this building appears to be completely forbidden, and the people and also the enemies inside the city seem to be giving it a pretty wide berth. And it's a large enough building that has kind of collapsed on itself that you could easily find a spot that's kind of hidden and out of the way.
Fantastic.
To land in, yeah.
Okay. Then,
but then specifically to your question, though, because you asked about activity,
right.
This is kind of popping at all times, especially at night right now where you guys are.
Right.
In this direction, there's not a whole lot. So if you needed an escape path away from the palace and away from the temple is probably your best bet from what you can
Works
gauge.
for me. Okay, then the last thing that Jericho will do before returning to the temple is try to precisely gauge the distances as much as possible to figure out exactly where he should be trying to aim dimension door.
You do the boot to toe thing.
I got some trigonometry to do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, we see. It's funny because here's what happens: is we see all of the people kind of bustling about, like carrying cloths and doing all this other stuff that they would normally do. Mostly servants and stuff. And we see like invisible Jericho, like with his arms out, like doing boot to toe, like measuring distances and stuff, and just like weaving in and out of people to kind of gauge the distance and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the scene that we see going on. And yeah, I think that per what I said before, I think that you can make it probably just... you know what, we'll just say you can make it there, because I said we can. It may require you... In fact, I think that you probably can, because you're probably actually, like, back here. So, yeah, you could definitely make it to a good area inside of the rubble.
Beautiful.
Where you would be concealed. At least until you began moving again. And then there might be some other checks. But, again, you could just perhaps turn yourself invisible again.
It's a start.
Or Farron could, because we know you both have it now.
I mean, I'm wary of, the fact that detect magic will still cause us to light up completely, but...
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, then, yeah, he'll just head back to meet up with Farron again.
Okay, cool. So I think you guys probably arrive at roughly the same time, and there's probably a moment of like, both of you are kind of like arms outstretched looking for each other, and I think we see the invisible two of you like walking past each other, like with your arms outstretched, like trying to find the other person. And then finally, like, it probably just ends in like a hug, right? Like you guys just find each other that way. You miss each other's hands completely and just collide, and find each other. And you're back inside of the main temple cathedral area, and you've noticed now that the individual who is inside the barrier is no longer there. Whatever he or she was doing has completed whatever they wanted to do. And you see the book, which is still floating there, which I assume is the target in this scenario. The book that is still floating there is still open. But I think that what is slightly different from now, you get a sense of... I think that both of you get a little bit of like that anxiety feeling, like that kind of feeling of electricity in the air, where it would be like uncomfortable to stop moving for whatever reason, and you can tell it's very clearly whatever was done while this individual was here. But the scene still remains the same. There's the dozen individuals kind of around in a circle on the outside of the barrier. I assume there is a short exchange of information on what the two of you found.
Yeah. Jericho reports he's got a good a route out and escape direction from there.
I found a good place that we can set on fire.
You're sure? I mean, I realize it's been desecrated and entirely occupied by minions of the purest evil, but are we sure we want to burn down one of Ulrich's temples? That seems like it could backfire on us a bit in terms of divine retribution.
Don't worry. Like, all the pews and statues are obviously in the other storeroom, and we're not touching the main temple as of yet, so it'll be fine. Don't worry.
I mean, and Ulrich is a pragmatist. He is. He's a pragmatic deity.
It's just the phrase "don't worry" is pretty much always counter-effective.
Yeah, and it also probably hits Jericho a little bit harder too, because like this. And by the way, this is not just an Ulrich temple. It is probably the biggest, most important temple of Ulrich that exists in the world. because this is the one place where he is worshipped over all others.
Fantastic.
Just to throw it out there in case you were curious. I think that the only thing that you guys didn't accomplish with all that is like figuring out how you were going to try and to get into the barrier.
Yeah.
I know that like the smoke up the room, do a thing, and then get out was the plan of escape / initiation, but
it's fair to think that while that might work as a distraction, the people that are actually surrounding us, or rather surrounding the barrier, are probably going to be specifically told not to abandon their work in such a case as that.
Yeah. It's pretty safe to assume.
There's a lot of them, which makes me think that, say, stabbing 2 of them in the back might interrupt whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah, it's that, or whilst everybody's running around because of the fire, we somehow manage to get the staff, and then we can do the...
click the magic button and do the thing.
I mean, interesting point, but I'd be a bit wary of trying to operate an evil magical object like that, surrounded by all of these folks, while the building is on fire.
And you don't know how to live, my friend.
Oh, is that how it's going to be?
Hey, no, it's fine. If you're not brave enough, then we can obviously go your safe way.
Safe? Safe? You think that... Fine, let's find him. Let's find the necromancer with his gigantic evil staff and prepare to steal that so that we come back here and steal this book, or part of it. Should we actually take the book, or just grab a few key pages and torch the rest?
I mean, we don't actually know what the book is. Just we know it's important and probably does bad juju. So I don't feel that we should just be destroying half of it and leaving the rest.
Right, we'll just set fire to the Temple of Ulrich. That won't have any consequences. But the evil book, that will protect.
Aye.
How long have you been doing this again?
It's fine. Look, I'm still alive, aren't I?
That's why I want to know how long you've been doing it. Fine, let's go look for Staff Man. How long have we got left, anyway?
I would say you probably have 30 minutes left.
Okay. Well, one way or another, this spell is ending when we're making our moves, so no reason not to use the time while we've got it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So, I'm going to require both of you to make me an investigation check, because you guys were gone when he left, so you gotta figure out maybe where he went. So both of you make me an investigation check, and we'll see how good at picking up his trail you are. I mean, reasonably, he's here somewhere in the building. Probably doesn't go very far, but I think that this is more to determine how long it's going to take you, since we are on a time limit.
Yeah, I mean, this is my plan, so I do think I'm in.
That you're what? I'm sorry?
13.
Oh, that you use your inspiration. You cut out there for me. Okay. Alright, a 13. So it's not great, but it's not bad either. A 13 being the highest there. Jericho, perhaps you get a bit distracted by, like, you go up close to where these people are chanting and whatever, and you get distracted by, like, I could just stab him right now. Like, literally, it just takes a stab, and then he's done.
It really does.
Like, I could just stab him, and then we could just grab the book and we could go. That's obviously what's going to work. So maybe you're a bit distracted by that when we're going through. And Farron, you're a bit more on point, I think, with the trying to find the dude. And you kind of evaluate the situation, and you see that there are a couple of doors that lead to the back, and you know that he came from below you, and I think there are two, like, there's a double door, like, directly below where he came out, and so it's safe to assume that you could, go in there and retrieve that. But while you both are up there, I assume you may want to take a closer look at the things that are up there, including the book itself through the barrier. So if you guys want to make me a perception check as well, I will give you some more information on perhaps what you see.
Absolutely.
Hey, 17's pretty good.
18.
Oh, and an 18 for you? Okay, perfect, yeah. So I think you guys get about the same amount of information on this. So as you're up there and investigating, the people who are kneeling, kind of chanting, with their hands folded in front of them and kind of like bowed heads, maybe like you do the thing where like you kind of like bend down and look underneath the hood that they're wearing. You can see that all of them are living, first of all. They're not undead creatures. And I think that you see that on almost all of them you detect signs of malnutrition. Their cheeks appear to be kind of hollow and sunken in. Their skin appears to be kind of pale. They look just generally weak. Their clothes look like they hang very heavy on them. I think you can see like some maybe one or two of the individuals has like a tighter robe on, and you can almost like see the ribs through the skin, through the robe. They appear to be very emaciated, is what I'm getting at here. And then I think that if you look at the book, you see that the binding of the book appears to be stitched together. It looks to be made out of like maybe multiple different swatches of like leather, as it's kind of like molded around it. And these swatches of leather appear to be like stitched together around the bindings of the book. So it has like some texture to it, where the stitches are a bit thicker than the leather pieces that are kind of surrounding the back and binding of this book. And then you can see, I think just barely on the page, you can see what looks to be, like, as it's just kind of hovering there, it looks to be a circle, right? And it looks to have like 12 little marks on it, very similar to what's currently going on. So it doesn't really give you a whole lot of information, but what it does tell you is perhaps this is a book of magic, which, you know, you probably already guessed, but hey, you have
I was really
confirmation
hoping
now.
for recipes.
Yes, it's actually Grandma's Cooking. It's the home cookbook.
I've heard of this, Farron. The
Yeah.
Necronomnomnomicon.
Yeah, right. There you go. There you go. The Necronomnomicon. That's a great name, by the way. So you guys head into the back room and you kind of weave your way through the dark hallways there, and eventually you hear some voices coming from down a corridor. And you the two of you sneak up, and you probably only spent about 10 minutes doing this, maybe 15 if we're counting. You you peek around the corner, and you can see there's a long hallway that kind of empties into a circular room. It doesn't have a door on it or anything, and as you approach, you can see that it's kind of lit up. And there are two people in the middle talking to each other. One is very clearly the robed figure, and you can see his staff is leaning up against one of the walls in here. And the other person you see is a medium-sized figure with long, kind of white blondish hair that cascades kind of down his back. His armor is blacker than the darkness outside. It's very slim fitting. The pauldrons on it have these sharp edges. You can see that that on his back is a shield. It's a large shield, almost overly big, that appears to have these designs on it. These kind of I should say, like, welded on rivets and stuff that kind of perpetrate it. And there is a sword that is in the scabbard, and you can tell just by the handle, it is encrusted with a few jewels, and the individual's kind of resting a hand on it with his blackened gauntlet. and on the shield there is painted a symbol, and I think both of you probably recognize it as it is the symbol of House Wilhelm. And I think the both of you believe that you are standing mere feet from Anders Wilhelm himself. And I think that that is a great place to take our break.
I mean, disagree, but okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let's take about, I would say let's be back at the top of the hour. We take a break a little early today. Let's be back at the top of the hour, ready to go, right on the money. That sound good?
Okay.
Cool. So, that's Steam. Okay. I will see you guys in just a few minutes.
Yep.
Alright guys, we're going to take a quick break. See you for the second half in just a few minutes.